It's time for romance recommendations. Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lena, this is Lena's Bookshelf, and today we're gonna talk about all of my favorite romance books. So I'm not a huge romance reader, but I definitely have a couple that are favorites that I think about a lot, that I would potentially reread, and that I would recommend to other people. So the first recommendation I have is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, and this is about two friends that are kind of not friends, not people that you would expect to be friends. They go on a vacation together every year, and so you kind of follow along each year hearing about their vacations, and then something sketchy happens and they kind of stop talking, stop being friends. And so about a year or so goes by and they decide, okay, let's give it one last try. Let's try to rekindle our friendship, go on one last summer vacation together. And so much stuff goes wrong in this, and they kind of rediscover each other and rediscover their friendship. So it's definitely a friends to lovers romance. And I just really enjoy Emily Henry's writing. This is definitely my favorite of the two that I've read. I haven't read Book Lovers yet, but I loved the characters in this. I loved the vacation vibes. I loved all of the talk about travel. I do travel for work, so I love all of the talk about going to different places and taking different types of vacations. So yeah, if you want a good friends to lovers romance, I highly recommend People We Meet on Vacation. Next recommendation I have is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey, I believe it's Niffenegger. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments down below if you know how to pronounce the author's last name. But this is basically a love story, and you're following the life of this girl as she grows up. And as she grows up, this man kind of pops in and out of her life at different times, and he's always different ages. So basically this man, his entire life, he time travels. He doesn't get to decide when he time travels or where he goes. So sometimes he winds up in this field and the girl is 6 years old. And then the next time he sees her, she's 27. And so we follow both of their lives, and they just show up in each other's lives at different times. And it is so beautiful and so heartbreaking. And this was also made into a movie, so I also recommend that as well. The next recommendation I have is a Colleen Hoover book. It's my favorite one that I've read. I've only read a couple of Colleen Hoover books, but this one's my favorite, and it's November 9. And so in this one, this boy and this girl meet, and they kind of have like one evening together. And they decide, okay, every year on November 9th, we're going to meet up at the same space. No matter what happens throughout the year, whatever, we'll come back next year. And so at first, I wasn't sure I was gonna like this book because it seemed a little bit YA because it was like college age, but then you follow them each year as they're growing up, and every year they have to kind of rediscover themselves, and it's heartbreaking, it's funny, it's enjoyable. I really, really like this one. Next, I have an Enemies to Lovers recommendation, and it's The Honeymooners by Christina Lauren. And in this one, you're following a woman. She is attending her sister's wedding, and she decides not to eat the food at the wedding, and so does the best man. And they are the only two that don't end up getting food poisoning. So since they're the only two that didn't get sick, the bride and groom decide, okay, you guys need to go on this honeymoon because otherwise, like, we're gonna lose the money anyway. It's already paid for, it's already set, so why not just go? So they basically go, and it has close proximity trope. It has enemies to lovers trope. It also has fake dating because when they're there, they have to pretend like they're a newlywed couple. And I really enjoyed like the comedic aspects of when they were on the vacation, but then when they return from the vacation, it becomes more of this like hard-hitting romance. So it's almost like two different romances in one. My next recommendation might be my favorite out of this bunch, and it's The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. And this one is following a girl who is trying to get a job as a wedding planner, and she is fighting for this job with another gentleman who she really dislikes, and she knows from like being at a wedding together or something. I don't remember all the details. It's been years since I've read it, but basically they have to work together to pitch why they should get this job. And so they don't like each other, they have to work together, and it has some good steamy scenes. It's set in Washington, D.C., which is where I'm from originally. And at one point in the book, they do have to pretend to be dating. I think they end up having to stay in a hotel room together. And so it has a lot of different tropes, all done really well. Next, we have The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. And this was just a nice, cute, wholesome romance. So basically you have this woman who answers an ad for an apartment to share it with this gentleman who is an overnight nurse. So basically they're never in the apartment at the same time, but they are both sleeping in the same bed, just never at the same time. And so they go along through life like that for a little bit, not knowing who their roommate is, not knowing who the other person is that's sleeping on the other side of the bed, who's eating the food in the fridge. And then they start leaving each other little notes, like little post-it notes and little letters around the apartment. And that's how they get to know each other. They don't meet, they don't talk or anything other than these little notes back and forth to each other. And so it's just really cute. It's such a cute way to get to know somebody. I love writing little notes and post-its and little letters to people. I think writing letters is a lost art in this day and age. And there's also some pretty emotional aspects to this book because the woman in the story, her brother is incarcerated and he's getting out of prison. And so she has to like help him reintegrate into society, and there's just a lot of good stuff in this book. Okay, and the last book that I'm going to talk about today is Dr. Stanton by T.L. Swan, and this book I read on Kindle Unlimited, and T.L. Swan writes some pretty smutty books, so this is probably the spiciest of all the books that I'm talking about today. But basically this woman is in Vegas and this guy's kind of harassing her at a bar, so this tall, dark, and handsome doctor swoops in and pretends to be her boyfriend to kind of save her from this creepy guy at the bar. And one thing leads to another. They end up having one night in Vegas. You know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And then she goes back to her life where she is in med school, going through all of her clinical rotations, and she has a son. And she shows up to day one of her clinical rotation, and guess who the doctor is? Oh my gosh, is anybody shocked? It's the guy from Vegas. So then they end up trying to work together and pretending like they didn't have that night in Vegas, and it just goes from there. And I think this book is part of like a series almost that follows like all of these different brothers and their romance stories, but it's not like you have to read them in order or anything. It's just different members of the same family, I'm pretty sure. But that is one thing that's neat about T.L. Swan's books, is that you start seeing some of the same characters, even if it's just like they pop in and out. They all kind of connect in some way. Okay, those are all of my romance recommendations for you. Like I said, I'm not super well versed in the romance genre, but these are definitely ones that I enjoyed and I think you should try and check out if you haven't already. Let me know in the comments below how you think I did. What's your favorite romance book? Please hit that subscribe button. It really helps out my channel, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!